No, you're not Jungfrau Airlines.
Yeah.
So,
Ouais, non. Ah oui.
C'est vraiment dégueulasse. J'avais fait un sketch. Pour ça, non, mais en tout cas, c'est pas rouge. Parce que j'ai à Julie hier, parce qu'elle disait qu'elle avait une petite boule derrière celui qu'elle a fait là-haut. C'est normal. En vrai, tant que c'est pas rouge et que c'est pas irrité.
Surtout que le haut, c'est vraiment.
Mais oui, c'est le pire. C'est celui qui s'est fait le plus. C'est pour ça qu'en vrai, j'ai trop envie de l'avoir, mais je me dis ça. C'est la genre, non, c'est un mal. Il n'y a pas de souci. Ouais.
Yeah, we might. Lecture that we skip. Yeah, that's Polish habit. I have a like. How are you?
come si chiama la stream manager? Reclamare delle absence che non sono absence. Ho 3 absence a rischio, ma non è vero.
Perché non l'hai fatta?
Una sì, e una
Lo so sicuramente.
what's the name of the stream? Se no No. La prima l'ho presa. La seconda ho tappato il ricarico. Ma la terza non capisco. Ho scritto la mia strappalacrime.
827.
Ari and drama. What's that? Like your reality. You have to try to reach
My face I put on my car and go back home to take my medical.
Like, why am I here?
like real.
No, but you can go back. Today is the session about what's going to be on the exam, but you can see today is the next session.
All right, welcome back to the decision and risk analysis module. Before I begin, let me first try to reflect a little bit on the 3 case studies we went smoothly. The first two were in session 1 and 2, Eagle Airlines and Dynatron. And if you think carefully about them, you probably realize they had one thing in common, as I mentioned right at the beginning. They were a big, risky, one-off decision you had to make. And I likened that to spinning the fidget spinner wheel a single time. And in those situations, we have always two objectives: maximizing the expected returns and limiting the risk at the same time. And that's a balancing trade-off. Now in session 3, we had a third case study called Jungfrau Airlines. And you might have realized that this case study had a different character. In this case, there was the uncertainty how many people show up at the flight on a particular day, but there were 4 flights a day, 365 days a year, possibly over multiple years. So the situation in Jungfrau Airlines was more akin to spinning the fidget spinner wheel 10,000 times. And we learned at the beginning of lecture 1 that in such situation, risk is not so relevant anymore. It disappears because we have these diversification effect, balancing out effect, and all what matters in those situations is expected profit, thus, or expected cost in Jungfrau Airlines. Now, if you answered question 5, 6, and 7 completely correctly, you should have written something that the main focus is only the expected profit. True, I know in question 5 you all went to great lengths to do all these distribution graphs, and they look very pretty, and you might learn something from it. For example, there is stochastic dominance going on. But at the end of the day, it is only the expected cost which was driving your decision, and based on the answers I've seen, most of you implicitly chose a setting where the costs were minimized. And I would describe those situations more as optimizing operational decisions under uncertainty. With operational here, the code word for many repeat transactions, many customers, many planes, many staff members, all with their individual uncertainty. That was session 1 to 3. And in session 4, we will look yet at another kind of decision problem under uncertainty. This time it will be about stage decision. As I already mentioned quite at the beginning of lecture 1, stage decision means we made some commitment at the beginning, but don't put all our cash on the table. And depending how our initial commitment plays out, whether it works out, whether it doesn't, we either might go all in or withdraw from our investment opportunity. And we analyze those kind of stage decisions in this lecture 4 and 5 using a method called decision trees. Let me try to explain this method at the beginning with a simple toy example. It's not exactly stage decision yet, but it helps to illustrate how to go about decision. The example is that of an antique dealer who buys and sells old, pretty stuff. And the context specifically is here that you routinely purchase items and sell them as an antique dealer at a higher price if possible in your gallery. Now, a potential valuable painting is on the market for an asking price of £1,000. No negotiation, either you take it or you leave it. From your experience, it can be either a 19th century painting or a 20th century painting. If it's 19th century, it's worth £3,000 you can sell it for. If it's 20th century, it is unfortunately only worth £300. And you're not really sure whether it's a real thing or the 20th century painting. And all what you can say at this point is 50-50 per chance of being either of these two. But you need to make a decision now. Should you buy the painting? To approach these problems in a decision tree approach, it is helpful to first think about the sequence of events as they are playing out. And there are three events happening. The first event is a decision. Buy the thing or don't buy the thing. £4,000 or don't spend any money but don't gain any. Then comes this chance event. The true nature of this painting will be revealed. Is it 19th century or 20th century? And depending on this chance event, you get payoffs at the end, which can be either £2,000 because you buy for 1,000, sell for 3,000, £2,000 profit, or can be minus £700 loss. Buy for 1,000, sell for 300, not a good deal. Or a third kind of payoff is if you haven't bought it, you don't get anything back, of course, either. Now, in decision trees, these three types of events are typically drawn using specific symbols. Decisions are always square. They don't need to be red color, doesn't matter, but it must be a square. Chance events are always circles. And payoffs are typical triangles, or if you have a background in computer science, you would call it leaves, perhaps. And with these three symbols, we are now ready to draw our decision tree for this simple toy example. And it looks like this here. At the beginning, there is usually a decision, we call it the root of the tree at the beginning, and it branches out into two paths. Either buy it for £1,000 or don't buy it. If you don't buy it, you're done. There's already a payoff triangle, £0, because nothing has changed in your money situation. Now, if you buy it, then comes a chance event, 50-50. Either 19th century or 20th century painting. Again, two branches going out, the probabilities must be written and all this chance event outgoing arrows. And in the end, you write your payoffs, your profits in this case. 2,000 or minus 700. Okay, now we have visualized our decision situation, but we haven't really come to an answer. That's the next step. To solve this decision tree, we do something perhaps a little bit unusual. We solve it from the end. Or we say we roll back stepwise the tree from the end to the beginning. How do we do that? Now, at payoff triangles, there's nothing to be done, but at chance events, what we do at each chance event, we calculate the expected profit of all immediate outcomes of this chance event. So everything that follows. Here we have two payoff triangles, but you can also have decisions or chance event as immediate outcomes. And the expected profit is easy here. 50% times 2,000 plus 50% times minus 700 equals £650 as expected profit. And we write it under the chance event. And now we move back again. And the next and final step is to think about our decision to take here. And at each decision square, we take always the best option among those immediately available. Not the average, but the best. And here we would choose, of course, an expected profit of 650 if our goal is to maximize expected profit. And we write this value under the tree. To make a decision tree readable, it is advisable to mark here in green, I did that, the branch you chose, your decision. So that it becomes immediately clear what to do here. And these £650 are called the value of the tree. That's a fixed phrase you should become familiar with. What's the value of the tree? It is the amount which is written under the root, the beginning of a decision tree. So, one thing to be clear about is what I have done here is I use the expected value. Now there is an assumption if we use expected values, expected profit. Our assumption is that the decision maker is risk neutral. In this course, unless it is specified otherwise, always assume a risk neutral decision maker with what to maximize the expected profit. That's also the standard way how to roll back all decision trees. rarely you do it in a different way. Okay, so now at this point, it's helpful to add a bit of more information to the tree, specifically some more probabilities, which I do on the next slide. Now, it is not strictly necessary, and you might see many trees which don't have it, but it can be helpful to write the probabilities of choosing each path under the branches of a decision square. So it's obviously 100% for the chosen one, 0% for the non-chosen. Yes, you can play lottery if you like to, but in this module, you have a question?
Why don't we subtract 1,000 for the value of the tree?
Let me come to it on the next.
Okay.
In 1 minute, we had a quite active discussion about that yesterday, and I realized I need to be more clear about it, so I come to it. And so we have here these 100% and 0%. As I said, helpful, not necessary. But once we have these probabilities, it is very easy to calculate the probabilities that we end up in each of these risk triangles, payoff triangles, if we take the best decision at each decision square. Because we simply need to multiply along the path. 100% times 50% equals 50% probability we end up with the 19th century painting. 100% times 50% probability that we end up with a profit of minus 700, and 0%, nothing to multiply, 0% that we end up with a payoff of 0. And if you have done that correctly, the probabilities should add up on these triangles to 100%. Something must happen. You must end up somewhere. So that's what I wrote here. Now to the question, why do I write the payoffs, as I showed here, as final profits, rather than working with sunk costs idea? So your idea was perhaps we can write the revenues here on these payoff triangles, because that's you get back 3,000 and 300. And then you would probably, what would you have here? You would have here 1,650. And because you already made at this decision, this point, the decision to invest £1,000. And here you would still keep 0%, zero profit, because you haven't invested anything. It is not wrong. I have seen these types of trees. But my personal preference is that it makes understanding the tree more complicated. It's more difficult to read and interpret what this means. Let me explain. When I look here at these triangles, it becomes, I get easily a sense of the distribution of my profits. I know I had 50% chance that I make £2,000, 50% chance that I make a minus £700, and 0% that I make no profit at all. So I can easily also mentally draw a histogram or a probability distribution of my outcomes. Now, if you write here the revenues, 3,000 and 1,000, you need to think a bit harder what actually this means. What is the distribution of your outcomes? You don't see it very nicely. That is the reason why I prefer to write it this way. And in Winston and Albright, they have done it the same way, so it's not just me who came up with this rule. But your one is equally valid, your suggestion, and if you prefer that, when we grade your homework after the session and also the final exam, you can read those trees as well. Okay, so that was our toy example so far. Let me move now to something a little bit more real. And that is the Freemark Abbey winery case study. So Freemark Abbey is a real vineyard somewhere slightly north of San Francisco in California. It's a very old vineyard, was founded in 1886 by a woman, the first one founded by a woman, and still operates up today. Has also a Wikipedia website where you find a lot of information what is going about on it, and it tells you, for instance, the make different types of wine, such as Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, and some other wines. But for this case study, what we are particularly interested is this one here. Depending on the weather conditions, the winery sometimes makes a late harvest Riesling known as Edelwein Gold. And it's this late harvest we need to think a little bit more about in this case study. So when you harvest grapes, at least in California, you can harvest at the normal timing when you usually do it, and you get your regular grapes, the ones you might also want to eat, and you can imagine that could make nice wine as well. Now, if you harvest late, you might end up in three possible scenarios. You end still up with your normal grapes. They're probably a bit sweeter because they ripe longer and might have different acid levels, slightly different taste, but it's similar. And that is if it's more kind of sunny weather. It depends on the weather condition. You could also end up with these kind of grapes. Now, they don't look particularly appetizing, but if you ask a sommelier, so a wine expert, they would be really getting excited about these ones because this is super delicious stuff once you make wine out of it. It has these, what happened here is it was slightly wet and a fungus called botrytis is spread across the vineyard and infected all of these grapes and gives the wine grapes a special botrytis flavor and also concentrates sugar and acid levels, makes it a bit more exciting wine, I suppose. That is the noble rot situation. But if it gets too wet, you might actually end up with a rotten harvest, something like this. You can still make somehow wine out of it, but it isn't great wine anymore, it's the cheap stuff you can buy in Tesco. So, that are the three possible scenarios, and as I said, depends on the weather condition and whether these botrytis spores spread. Even if the weather's right, the fungus does not always want to spread. And let me show a short video on these botrytis spores so that you get a bit more sense what's going on here.
So here we are at the very last day of harvest, almost into April, and right at the very top of the farm. As you can see, it's an absolutely glorious day here today. We had some rain a few days ago, and so the botrytis has developed very nicely. And here we're actually looking for just the sweetest, most concentrated berries. One is very much at risk, and the elements kind of dictate whether you're going to be making our noble late harvest at all. We need obviously a little bit of rain or some dew just at the right time as the sugars are sort of a maximum development within these grapes. And then you need the botrytis spores to start growing naturally into the berries. And the effect this has is actually of concentrating everything. It concentrates the sugar, the acid, the flavor, until you get this wonderful sweet raisined berries with that sort of slight botrytis taste. And we would obviously like to go through and just with tweezers pick off every berry. But we're doing a lot of sorting, as you'll see in the vineyard. Yeah, the style of wine that we're wanting to make now out of these very sweet raisin berries is very much of a dessert style wine. We've made it deliberately in a slightly drier style. So although dry wines are around 4 grams of sugar, we'd actually have it at around 100 grams of sugar, which is considered dry in sweet wine terms. Kathy and I have named it after the Cape honeybee that you get only in this particular area called Apis mellifera capensis, or the honeybee of the Cape.
So that was from South Africa rather than California, but it's the same stone. Okay, now that we know more about this noble rot, let me move now to the actual case study. And the case study has an event at the beginning, namely a storm is brewed. A storm is coming towards California, and the winery needs to decide what to do. It has two options: harvesting now or going for a late harvest. If it harvests now, it sees already the quality of their grapes and judges they are okay to make wine out of it. And they see the grapes, they can have a sense of what the quality of the wine will be and believes they make a profit of around $250,000 in this case. Now, if they harvest late, the situation gets a bit more complicated because there are lots of uncertainties playing out. So if they wait and the storm brings heavy rain, that's not good. We end up with our rotten harvest, the kind of grapes we don't want. There are two options here. You can either sell the harvest or the wine you make out of it off-label. You don't get much, so you end up with a loss of 100,000, but at least something. Or you can use your own reputation, the power of your own brand, to at least reach break even with this stuff. So £0 profit, nothing gained, nothing lost. That's if the storm is heavy. If the storm is light, then there are also a couple of outcomes possible. If we have light rain, and in addition, the botrytis spore spread, both happens in the probability of 50%, then the winery can have made its Edelwein Gold. And its jackpot generates £800,000 profit. Now, if the spores don't spread, not a disaster because it's not too wet, so the grapes ripe further, and it now depends on how much sun there was, how exactly the humidity level was, and some other facts, what the quality of the wine will be then. There can be, I call it either poor, medium, or high quality wine. The winery thinks this happens with equal probability of ending up either with 200,000, 300,000, or $400,000 profit. Not every wine here is exactly as good as another. So there was a lot of information, and you probably fall asleep halfway through when I went through all the numbers. And that is partially the point. Because what we use decision trees for is to summarize a complicated case or complicated events playing over time visually in a way which decision makers can easily understand. And what I did here, I drew the decision tree for the case of this botrytis Friedmark Abbey situation. And it starts with a decision at the beginning. Do we harvest now or do we wait? You already know from the previous slide, if we harvest now, we make a certain profit of 250,000, give or take. If you wait, then a chance event plays out. Heavy storm or light storm. If the storm is heavy, that's not great. We get a rotten harvest. Two options here, off-label, accepting a loss, using the power of our own brand, at least go for break even. Now, if there is light rain, there is a second chance event, an independent chance event playing out. The fungus spreads, or it doesn't spread. 50-50. If it spreads, wonderful. We end up here, jackpot. If it doesn't spread, there is a third chance event coming still, namely the quality of our wine. Here in this example, there are three outcomes, 200,000, 400,000, each with equal probability. So it is quite much easier to digest this graph rather than reading a text and trying to make sense of it. The next step would be to find out what is actually the decision we want to make. Do we want to wait or harvest now? But before we can get that far, we need to be clear, what do we actually want to achieve? What is Friedmark Abbey's objective? So what do you think? What does a vineyard want to achieve in this situation? What do you think? Yep.
I think their aim is to maximize profits.
They maximize the profit, expected value basically.
Yes.
So the capitalist is speaking. So what is basically happening here? You might think that there is an institutional investor which spreads its money among different projects, and Freemark Abbey is one of them, and it might have 20 other vineyards and maybe has some money in construction industry and is not really concerned about risk. That's okay. Could be. That's usually how we do it. Any other thoughts?
They want to build their reputation as a good winemaker.
Yes, why?
This is with regards to whether they want to sell labeled wine or own brand. So they can make a choice. If I understand correctly, it's not the chance distribution of whether they want to jeopardize their reputation and not make a loss. I mean, keep the reputation, not make a loss, or jeopardize the reputation and make 100 loss.
Yeah.
In case of heavy rain.
You might ask yourself, why do you go in the wine business? It's a very peculiar type of industry. Probably because you like wine. So you care about your product. Let me call this person the sommelier, who is interested not just in the reputation of the brand for purely financial purposes, but it's perhaps also their life worth in this vineyard. And you care about the quality of what they produce. Okay, third option. What else could be objective?
We want to mitigate the damages of the situations, because in both situations they don't have full control, so just like limiting, not necessarily maximizing profit, but just finding themselves in a situation where they don't lose that much, nor like a realistic situation.
Yeah, that is right. There is a big one-off decisions they kind of need to make here. It's the decision for the entire year, and there are risks involved. Now, it's perhaps not a terrible situation because the worst loss they can make is 100,000, and if they're at risk of bankruptcy, they probably would rather sell own brands just to survive to the next year. But risk is an important factor. You had another idea?
Yeah, I want to add on that maybe the owner is risk adverse, and so he just want to harvest the grapes now and not even think about.
Yes, it depends also about their cash situation, for instance. If they have a big loan and they need to fulfill the loan, if they end up in a bad year, that might be the end of the vineyard. Not because it's not a profitable vineyard, but simply their starter cash. There are studies that about 40% of all bankruptcy is not because the business idea didn't work, but they simply didn't have any money anymore. So that could be another reason to consider. So that I would see that as kind of the three possible objectives. Okay, but before we roll back the tree, let me think a little bit more about the probabilities. So I want to specifically focus now on this triangle of a low quality wine. And how likely is it that we end up in this situation? So if you are here in this wine quality and chance event, so you made already the decision to wait, it turned out light rain, and botrytis spores didn't spread, and you are here. What is the probabilities that you end up with low quality wine? Easy one. What do you think? And?
If you're already in that yellow circle, it's 33%.
Yes, it's written there. Now, let's assume you are here. What is the probability that you end up with a low quality wine? What do you think? Stay on the corner.
1 by 6.
Take it?
1 by 6.
Yes, it's 50% times 33%. You can give it as a fraction, 1 or 6, or 17%. Now, if you are here in the rain chance event, what's the probability? What do you think? 8%, yes, we just multiplied by another 50%, or 1 over 12, 8.33% if you're precise. And if we are here, what's the probability that we end up with a low quality wine? What do you think?
Same.
The same. Conditionals that we wait on. It is only 8.3% if we decide here to wait. If we decide not to wait, then we have a 0% probability that we end up here, because we end up always there. So, but it was kind of right, yeah. Okay, now with this information in mind, I would like you to try to roll back the decision tree now yourself. So there are two questions. First, roll back the decision tree. Remember, you need to calculate the expected profit at each chance event and make the best decision which maximizes the expected profit at each decision square. So for example, here the expected profit would be simply 33% times 200 plus 33% times 300 plus 30% plus 400, so it is 300. And it's already given here on the sheet, which I will distribute now so that you can draw this. And here the probability would be then 50% times 300 plus 50% times 800. Only the immediate outcomes are taken into account when you roll back the tree. That's the first one. And then I want you to calculate the probabilities that we end up at each of these payout triangles. I already did one here with 8.33%. And you need to fill out the other one. And you need to assume that you are here in the harvest square and you always take the best decision. What is if you take the best decision, what is the probability that you end up at each of these 7 triangles? So I will distribute this now so you can directly draw on it, it's much easier. And work with your neighbor, don't work alone, it's a bit boring otherwise. You have to keep it reasonably be entertained. And
No, but anyway, the probability.
We're doing it together, but
It's basically
50 times 50 times.
Allora, ça c'est 8 par 3.
if anyone doesn't have a sheet yet, please raise your hand and we give you one.
Bon, c'est un peu un petit mot de arbre quand on était en première plante, petit plan, petit truc, arbre probabilité c'est tout, c'est perfect. Bon, petit souvenir. Ouais, cher. Mais allô, mais moi le problème c'est que quand j'ai fait un bac ES, c'est pas de maths. Donc quand j'ai fait économique, blabla, je trouve que micro macro, le jour où je commence à faire des globales, déjà moi j'ai revu de la géométrie, puis on va avoir un problème. Non, non, mais moi je veux pas. Ouais. J'ai commencé à faire moi j'ai revu les bacs calculer l'air d'un. C'était quoi? Alors.
You should always do this. You should always say
No, my.
How do we need to remember?
One of the presenters said that then it's higher, and then that one is going to be the one.
Moi, si je pense en mode, comme t'as fait genre en mode, on va commencer là, et puis genre check l'autre.
The next one, sorry, no, it's high, yeah. Yeah, we would like to be about.
No, sorry for that.
Yeah, we like kind of some sort as meeting. At the end, this is the best option.
Take this, multiply it by this, take this, multiply it by this, add something, go back, and then have a perfect. Ça fois ça, plus ça fois ça, va, ça,
We just started basically making this to started
No, but you need to
Oh, I understand that before waiting on
I don't think so because we're still having our 90% right? So we're trying to see like
yeah, what is going to be the expected day of the year, and then
yeah.
we can see whether
The 8.3.
Should we harvest now or later? Should harvest later? Should wait. Assume you're in the harvest decision, not
Okay, I think so. Do we have to?
But I don't understand. Yes, but so first I don't understand why I have 175.
okay, so we have 25%, so we use this.
oh no, yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I'm
already calculated like this range.
Yes, exactly. That one I think was 75, right?
The sum of everything.
That's why, like, I had, you see, travel cuts, so 1 to 2 November, and then I have to stop.
Integration. And if you do it an infinite number of times, this scenario, on average,
Fucking travel.
it's not a perfect. It's the best thing there is.
Risk number 8.33. 8.33. I know you multiplied this times a third times yes, that's numbers you can multiply, but it doesn't really make any sense. I don't know what the 6 means, 6.6. I wouldn't know what it means. No, I already gave you.
So we don't need
It's already part of the solution, but then I saw that even so maybe
Is 8.3% just the low one?
because same numbers. Even for the medium one, it would be also 50% times 50% times 53%. Different parts, but the same numbers.
Now we're applying the exchange rate.
if I find that number,
You would say like 150.
Yeah. They would have to start.
Okay, so you're
Yeah, so we have to work back here.
The likelihood, yes, it perfectly works. But I think that if there's a minor mistake in your environment, it can be that.
We'll see how he jumps.
We'll go back to the classic. We start with this one times this one. We get we need to multiply it by 5.
It doesn't work, the likelihood is small. It depends how wrong it is, how you got it.
This one.
Well, this is great.
Wolves were, I think,
Tomorrow we can
better than other people in different games. They're way tougher.
like
I'm not sure.
I got this
That is in the notes.
but it was not hard. Like I didn't find that hard. So much more work to do. Actually doing everything that they bother to come. Yeah, mine's right. I'm like, oh, it must be
Yes. No. Actually, there's nothing to worry. Struggling. This boss is very. Security.
It's technical issues. You know that you can select the point in the map and show just that amount of It's clicking randomly for like 2 minutes. And then at one point I said, okay, there's obviously something wrong.
You know, there's ones where like, so you don't have like the ability to like,
Now it's working well.
Not really. I mean, like you have the graduate scheme, yes.
In February,
Already close. Like they're
time to allocate to each.
in summer. You apply in spring. Like we don't apply that early.
So out of the, I don't know if
I'm not sure about like not applying.
Like it is.
No, I fucked up the second part.
Can you have some candy? One is manufacturing.
What I meant is when you are at the environment, which is I think the very top. It's like you work in 30 animals, 20 plants, yeah, 30 minutes to build an ecosystem that works. It's not easy. Unless you get lucky and you just start choosing the right animals every time and you're like building immediately. So,
40 hours a week.
Yeah.
So more like the salaries are around.
Yeah, but then it seems like
Let me call housing prices much more. Yeah. It's not
no, but trust me, I did it by hand in February, and I did it this time for my brother.
I was testing it.
No, tell me there are 5 animals.
you're part of my job.
If it's the same, but I think it's the same. But I didn't have to. Because they said 60 pounds, and it literally keeps processing. Like you just put in the full number.
Others might not be there with the balance I need to strike here. Let's talk a bit about the solution. And maybe the easiest way is if you just give me the numbers I need to fill in. I already told you here, this is £300 profit. So I know some of you found this 300 a bit confusing and ended up calculating 300 times 33% and wrote 66 here. I wanted to help you actually by already giving you part of the solution. It turned out I made life a little bit harder for you. I apologize for that. And I already told you when rolling back the tree, we end up here with 550. Just calculating the expected profit. So what have you here? Can I hear a number? What do I write under this square? Zero, exactly. Because we choose our best decision. And that is zero power. We don't take the expected profit here, we pick the best. Of course we can choose. Why would you go off label if you can make more money own brand and we are only interested in the money we make this year? What have you written here? 275, simple, 50% times 0 plus 50% times 550. And what's here? 275, exactly. We take the decision which maximizes our expected profit. That means we wait. Probabilities is also not, I hope most of you got there. This is 8.33%, I already gave it to you. And the other two triangles are exactly the same calculations. 100 times 50% times 50% times 33% is also 8.33% or 1/12.
Yeah, I have a question because here we have 275, so you want to keep this one, but imagine a situation where you can still win $200. So like if for instance you are very really risk, so although you have a higher probability to earn more, some people may choose 250 because it's sure, and on the other side you can have a even if the probability is lower.
Yeah. So it depends on what's our objective. We're taking here the capitalist view, who has lots of vineyards. In fact, Primark Abbey now belongs to a complement of vineyards. There are 32 other vineyards to consider. If you're concerned about risk, well, I mean, you make 25%, $25 more, so $1,000 more, but are all over the place with your outcomes. If you just own a single vineyard, that would be slightly suicidal, probably. Okay, so what do you have as probability here in this triangle? 0%. Exactly, because you would never choose it. What do you have here? 50%, because there's 50% chance that the rain will be heavy, and we decide to wait. That's how we roll it back. And here, I gave it over to you, 25%. And the answer is here, 0. At least if we are capitalists. If we are risk averse, the answer would be 100%. All right. So, now I asked about drawing the risk profile or histogram. So risk profile is a term we use in decision analysis. And for these decision tree analysis, for these kind of graphs, it's simply probability distribution, similar to what we have seen in session 2. Here we have discrete outcomes. Some people prefer single lines. I tend to go more for wider bars. Doesn't really matter in this course. Whenever I tell you draw a graph, for example, in homework 2, you need to draw a graph. I mean, sketch a graph. Don't go with an exact measure and calculate this millimeters perfectly. I don't care about those things here. It's about communicating to managers roughly what's going on here. And you may want to draw the cumulative distribution over it. So here it was the rate, 50% probability, and then the more the profits are, the higher our cumulative distribution. Again, I don't care how you draw it. I know there are different conventions to draw cumulative distributions. I tend to go use the stepwise approach. And if you want to compare that with the option to harvest now, that would look like that. Just a single bar because it's now we rolled back the decision tree here for the capitalist. And we already discussed what would the risk-averse decision maker do here. So he would get 250 pounds because 1,000 pounds because he harvests now. Now, what do you think the sommelier does? The person who has the highest reputation. who cares about its reputation. What is their expected profit? Ala?
So it says, so we care, so we wait for the rain, and the chance of us getting the party to be 275.
So the sommelier would make 275.
And we start to expect because we waited for the rain.
Yes. Someone comes up with a different number. It's not 275.
What's the question?
Right?
It's 250.
250, why?
Because we don't want to sell it to our own brand. We want off-label. That's -100 loss. And when we average that out with 550, we get we get 225.
225, that's the
Then we
answer,
get
exactly. 225. The sommelier cares about wine and he would really love to make botrytis wine. So he accepts that he could actually make a higher expected profit if he harvests now. But instead, he accepts lower profit just for the opportunity to get this one here. So in a way, the sommelier is almost a bit risk-seeking in its own way. So to summarize, sommelier has an expected profit of 225. The risk-averse decision maker actually has more, 250, and the capitalist, of course, maximized this number at 270. Yes.
No, I didn't really understand why if we wait it's 225. No, it's 275.
For whom?
No, can you just repeat this last part? I didn't really understand.
By the sommelier, so the person who cares about its wine,
Yeah.
gets 225.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. What basically happens, he cares about its reputation, its wine, so he doesn't sell own brand. He sells off-label if he ends up here. He accepts it's a loss of 100,000, that's part of the risk of doing business, and minus 100 times 50% plus 550 times 50 is 225 to 225. You got that?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, looking at this graph, especially at the probabilities, I'm getting a little bit skeptical here. How much thought has really gone into these probabilities? Because they look all a bit like coin tosses. 50-50 heavy light rain, 50-50 botrytis no yes, and a three-sided coin, 33, 33, 33 low, medium, and high. And I'm getting worried here. And I'm wondering, what is it that changed these probabilities a little bit? Does it change my decision? So ultimately the question is, how sensitive are these probabilities, are the results to these probabilities? And to get a sense of it, we move back to what we did in lecture 1, namely a sensitivity analysis. And let me start with the sensitivity analysis for rain, which is perhaps the biggest driver of our results. So when I do a sensitivity test in decision trees, it works a little bit different, of course, than in our Excel models where we had the data tables. This time, I say I don't assign a probability of 50% here, but I assign a probability of P to this outcome. And if I assign a probability P of light rain, I'm uncertain about what the spell should be. What is the probability I need to assign to heavy rain? 1 minus P, exactly. Why? Because the probability and the complementary probability must always add up to 100%. We must end up somewhere in this chance event. There is no third possible outcome. So make sure when you draw a graph that the probabilities along all these branches from a chance event add up to 100%, otherwise you got something wrong. So it is 1 minus P. And with this information in mind, I can now roll back the tree. And it works somewhere similar as we did before. Here, if we go along this path and end up with the Botrytis chance event, the P doesn't really matter anymore, and we get the expected profit of 550. But this time we end up with probability P here. And we end up with 1 minus P probability of this chance event, it makes 0 profit. So as a result, our expected profit here changes from previously 275 and becomes now a function. Namely P times 550 plus 1 minus P times 0. And we can simplify that. It becomes 550p. Okay. Now, do we choose to wait or do we harvest now? It might be helpful to graph the situation. What you see here, the red line is the payoff if you harvest now. You know it's 250 and it doesn't depend on P. P is our horizontal axis, but it doesn't influence the profit of harvesting now because we harvest before the storm gets realized. Now our expected profit for wait is now this function here, which depends on P. So if P is 0, we end up here, 0%, 0 payoff, and if P is 1, we end up here at 550. And that's just a linear graph. And what we want to know is, what should be the probability P so that we change our opinion? So basically, we want to know where do these lines intersect. And we can calculate that as we look at the graph simply and see the number, but we can also calculate it. We decided to harvest now rather than waiting if our expected profit from now, 250, is larger than the 550p. Depending on p we get, if we wait, we arrange that, we end up with p equals 45%. So if our p is below 45%, the probability of light rain, we should harvest now if we are capitalists. Now, how sensitive is now the probability of light rain for our decision? Pretty sensitive. We just need to be a little bit off from our current estimate and we would take a different decision. So we need to be very careful in thinking about what assumption we put in this model. As already in session 1, this tree is full of assumptions. What in this case our vineyard thinks. And if we get the assumptions wrong, we get the whole model wrong. Okay. Now let me move to a different sensitivity analysis. This time it will be about how much do we charge own brand if we have a rotten harvest. If you're a capitalist, yes, you want to maximize the expected profit, but of course you also are mindful that there is a future beyond this year. So you're wondering how much do you want to rip off your customers and fleece them by giving them poor wine and pretending it's good stuff. And you're wondering maybe how low does this net value, currently 0, needs to be so that we change our opinion and harvest now. So we assign now an x to the payoff and roll back the tree with the x. So as this decision, it's a bit complicated now because it's not just the expected value we calculate, but we need to make a decision, and I write it down as that here. So basically it takes a maximum of minus 100 and whatever the x is. And then you calculate the expected profit of this. So you end up 50% chance that you end up in this outcome, basically to make a decision, and 50% chance that you end up in expected profit of 550. And we wait as long as this value is larger than 250, and otherwise we swap and decide to harvest now rather than waiting. And now solving this equation it's not hard, but you might not quite know how to go about it. The easiest way is to use simply Excel. So that's the way how I did it. So you simply have in one column where you have different x values, and the second column you use the max function we talked about in lecture 1 and 2, and simply plot it, and you get up with this graph. The red line is as before if we harvest now. The blue line looks like this. why does it does not look like a line? Why is there a kink? What do you think? Why is that? Artem?
It depends on the value of the x, and below -100, we just always pick the off-label one.
Exactly. Once x goes below -100, you have this max fraction here. Basically, our downside is limited to -100 pounds. We would never sell our own brand at which we know is kind of tricking our customers at a lower value than if you just could get rid of it off-label. Exactly. And we can look at the intersection, which is easy to read here. It is -50 pounds. What does it mean? We would never sell own brand and make less than -50 pounds. Why? Because in this case we get more money if we harvest now rather than waiting. It also means the capitalist would never sell off-label because he can never get there, even if an X is very, very small, very large loss. Okay, so I see you get a little bit sleepy now. That's fine. It's a bit repetitive. Let me wake you up a little bit. What I want you to do now is to calculate the same value of X. This time we call it Z for the outcome of low quality wine. How low does our payoff for low quality wine, only this one, everything remains as before, needs to drop so that we decide not to wait anymore, but to harvest now. So it's as before, I want you to find the intersection between the red and the blue line, and this time we have set our payoff. To motivate you a little bit, the first person who comes up with the solution, so please lift your hand if you have it. I brought with me a bottle of Botrytis wine. I'm afraid it is not Primark Abbey. You can't buy it in the UK, but it's the best thing. It's this Vilafira Pinzo from Jordan Wine. They saw the video before. So the first person who gets it, please raise your hand. I will note it, and if you answer correctly, you have this one, and otherwise I will also wait for the second and third person. Now, if you don't like alcohol, like me, not teetotal, I give you also a non-alcoholic version. You can choose now. So here we go.
What? No? I think it should be -100. What do you mean? That's not the right answer. 200 minus. Yeah, I think so.
So you have the solution?
Is it minus?
Okay.
I didn't You know how to do it? The other class yesterday. Get the wine bottle. Oh, sorry.
I'm afraid. Someone might be, I'm not sure whether he got it right, but someone might be earlier. What is earlier? So lift your hand if you found it. I'm looking still for third candidate. You found it? Good day, Ingrid. So, okay, continue. I don't reveal it quite yet. But we have our 3 candidates.
You actually do it.
This should be multiplied by 2.
We get to complicate these formulas there. And usually the people are past the you some tricks to get there. There are shortcuts.
You haven't changed this number, like, what is it?
I tried.
Yeah, okay, I think
There's
he's
one
one.
there.
There's
You
one
found
there.
it?
So I divided 25 by 8.6. So I subtracted 300.
It's trying to like, I even have a link to my link.
Practically, yeah.
All right, I think a couple of people found the solution. Let's first ask our first person who raised the hand. So, what number do you have?
Negative 100.
Negative 100. Which one do you want? Okay, you take the botrytis one. Okay, well done. So he gave the answer minus 100. That's correct, and he was very fast with that. So I'm wondering how you can you explain to the class how you got there.
Yeah. So where the decision would change is when the option with rain reduces below 250. So I took the difference between 275 and 250, which is 25. And the only number which we can change is the one with 200. So what I did was I took 25 divided by 8.33%, which was 300. So I subtracted 300 from 200, which gave me 100.
Yes, what he basically did, he used a shortcut. So let me just rephrase. So it's a 25 pounds difference. So that's all what we need to change. How do we change this number by 25%? 25,000. Well, we can look at these 8.33%. What does it tell us, this 8.33%? It tells us that the low, if you have a low quality wine, this number contributes 8.33% to this expected profit. And if you divide these 25 different you want to make by 8.33%, you end up with 300. 25 divided 8.3 is 300. So if you reduce this number by 300, you end up here being 250, and then you have equality. And that's where the intersect. That is the shortcut solution. You can go this path. It works. It's a bit. I didn't expect you to come up with this. That's not a standard solution, this course. Yesterday, someone solved it by using goal-seeking algorithm in Excel. He was very fast. I have no idea how it is. And there were some other shortcuts people used. But let me explain you the approach I was planning you actually use. Namely, simply rolling back the tree using a set instead of 200. It's a bit laborious, and I've seen quite a few got there, and it's easy to make mistakes. So you end up here at 0.33 set plus 233, set times a third plus 300 times a third plus 400 a third. Now, in this chance event of rain, first here, so you have 50% of this term plus 50% times 800, you end up 0.17 set plus 517, and now again 50% times 0 plus 50% times this term, you end up with half of 0.08 set plus 258. Now the same thing as before, you start to harvest now. If this expected profit here is smaller than 250, our thing we can get for certain, and if you rearrange, you get set equals minus 100, or you might just mark it. That's where the two intersect. It's a bit laborious, probably nothing I would give you in an exam. I would probably pick an easier example, but that's, if you can solve that, you are ready to answer any exam questions on basic sensitivity analysis. With that, I will send you to your break, and I give you this time only 15 minutes. So I want you to be back at 9:15, please.
Little by little. Yeah.
quite personal, like, we're happening, we're happening. Everyone was like, come on, yeah.
We still have another bottle. Is there another bottle?
Yes, it's non-alcoholic now.
Oh, I see. How are you?
So far, I've just seen a few in the shop.
Sorry.
What are we doing? That's the best thing. Yeah, probably something. With the six. They have but I used to go a lot around my place. I used to there's like a restaurant, a bar just down the office. Yeah, I used to go there in Paris. I used to go there with my friends to do it. It's a very, very interesting place. I mean, they're very nice also, Paris.
I think because West is large, I have a friend who does UI UX.
Where is here in London? Actually, I'm trying to picture why you didn't do the DST after it.
Sorry, what?
I'm trying to picture why you did DST.
I didn't get the visa, right? So what happens is after you graduate, so if you're a STEM major, you get 3 years. And
Yeah.
other major, you just get 1 year. What happens after this is your company sponsors you, and it's like a lottery.
Yeah.
And then if you get your visa in the lottery, then you're like sorted. So I
No,
think-
this one.
Yeah.
I've been applying for the lottery for a while.
Yeah, it's
Every year
just so like difficult to get it. So first you find a company who's ready to sponsor you, which is like so hard. You do that, there's no guarantee you get it or not. So
Wow. Even with your company.
yeah, so my company did sponsor me, but what happened is like I was like my 10 friends who applied, only one of them got it. So others just did like a degree for the main seat just to stay there, and I didn't.
My brother had the same issue. He went to Stanford.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and he worked for Venus. But they are in LA. So we are the head office in LA. So he worked there for a while. He was actually in a good position. But pretty much the frame you always have to apply for. Despite the company's sponsorship, he can't. He couldn't really get how do you call it, with lottery.
Yeah,
So
so
at some
once
point,
the company sponsors you, all you have to do is like they submit your passport number, and then if your passport number gets picked, you
What do you buy the pets?
the work visa. And it's
Really?
like fat.
My favorite brand. Sure, you know that I've never shopped from Massimo Dutti. Massimo Dutti is Zara's high-end brand.
It's not very big on MIM. It's more like
MBA is good underground.
Did you have to adjust the land?
This
Or
was
was
better.
it
I have another one that I just
you had?
I mean, I would love to go back.
Yeah.
It's just like hard.
But do they also have like plain colors?
Yeah.
Just gray.
I think people don't go to the
It's spent like
it's very formal. Then they also have blazer.
Yeah.
But I just put pants and I love it.
Can you keep them by themselves?
Not really, like, because I have two of them. And
never got it. So at some point it was like
Yeah.
got a job in London. So
Yeah, no, but
doing them,
it's like very
the first one have the dryer because it's woolen.
to settle there. So what they did was
Dryer, so
you can just enroll in any university.
Hey, they're hurting.
for the second one, just because I love them so much.
But it's like a very like a loop. It's just the name.
Those words.
You don't feel them. Some of
The only thing is that it was super late. I thought it was 7:30.
I'm for sure. You have surely more than one but anywhere.
they had it it was the new collection. It's wool with some.
I didn't get it.
About me, don't
You should see it. You should see that again.
Are you planning to go back? I mean, if you're
I want to, but I just don't know how to.
I
Like,
think it's
the
important.
only way I can
Thankfully, I had a lot of water, and it was like 14.5%.
Yeah.
Stronger.
That's like another year.
What about like
7 a.m.
I don't know if Publicis is
Then the company will have to again sponsor me.
I had the same problem. I had like, we had unlimited.
what if they can
There's no
sponsor
other-
you to start working there actually, and you can
No, so I mean,
Or here, and then I had the so now I thought about it.
way to do it.
So it's worse than me. It was big alarm. That was really bad for my
what about
So I was like,
the run if you work for at some point can you kind of move to another maybe stay?
Maybe I can do it for 6 months, but if I have to do it permanently, I would still need it.
I don't even know how many glasses I had, but it was like just refill.
Yes, at the same time they're not super tight because I don't know them.
I fell asleep in the middle.
Really?
The eyes are big, so like check out like a 1% of
Yeah. No.
Then the same time you become more fast. Here it's not, and then you have to. The other ones that they have from us, why they tailor because here it's fine, but then it's too wide and down.
The others think they get him a ticket.
Why did you leave us again? Why?
So he wouldn't be embarrassed.
It's just London.
You can't be.
I mean, I kind of get it. I've also we went to certain
What he said, but I didn't solve it.
and I fell asleep 5 times. I was so tired that day. I could not keep my eyes open.
They have to sponsor you.
I've fallen asleep in clubs before.
Yeah, me too. But I mean, alcohol. Why?
Yeah.
Like in the cinema, especially when you have some beer. Especially now, you know, when you have like sofa chairs.
You were gracious enough to tell him.
Like plays, operas, everything. I can't. I think like especially at that point, high school, I was like running.
Like is it like a talent visa?
Yeah, like a talent visa. And then others just did like kind of
Where did you go to see some slave?
Single occasion, I don't want to buy a
I mean, like you can still use something that you want.
I was like up in and out of consciousness, and the sort of fantastical like setting. Yeah, I was like a dream world. It was pretty good. I like the costume as well.
Yes, and they felt really out of that.
It's very different from any other, performance. Like when you go to
Actually, I might.
there's usually this one guy who's one thing, which is like and there's like a million things going on.
The person next to me, she was like, I know, good at explaining.
I think they have like
Yeah, they have a bunch, and they have this thing that the regional ones are in Las Vegas, and they don't leave, they don't travel. So they have like 5 real Cirque du Soleil and the traveling Cirque du Soleil, which is a bit, well, I mean, it's still an amazing show, but it doesn't have as much stage for example, in I went to one in Las Vegas, and it was pretty fun because in the beginning they just take some random guy on the stage, put him on the stage, so there's some random shit, and then he just gets like it's a huge room, he just gets pulled down like he was my character. Yeah, he was but when he like and then the stage was like go down. Like first there was stage and then it would go down with
Yeah, I know.
and people were jumping from the top of the circle.
I always heard about people who are throwing ways to one but I didn't receive like a call from the and yeah, we're doing very
So then photo.
and after that
We are buying so much box because they own the poster. That's why we had co-advisor.
that much beer?
Huh?
That much beer?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we buy. I think we spend 1,000 a year. So maybe like a month. So it's not like an insane amount, but we're partnering with them. And the box, I don't think it's kind of like you can come to whatever show you want. Just never get invited.
Apparently this is the last tour.
Really? Probably not his first last tour.
It's all good.
yeah. Complicated. He's from Egypt for my culture, we never talk about my culture, we never talk about that's my stupid thing, man.
There's also we're in Milano.
When I look at myself, I'm just like,
so there's no
more exploding.
Price 400.
Yeah.
Check the other one, the one including.
Usually overlook that it's very hard to get family from family. Last one. When that's I mean, sitting person, yeah, just one. I'm average. People that they went to I was shocked. I was shocked. That's like it should be something I know it's going it's everyone.
Yeah, true. I mean, access has recently. especially against master ranks.
The opportunities I have here. Just commercial taking. So the system is very difficult. Let's go back and do something. So what I can.
I mean, if like on the day somebody is signing up for 30 minutes because he cannot attend and like realize 30 minutes for the bots and left it. You know, too is really nice because you go. It's really well.
What we also hear, all of them very well. Technically,
Next 1,000 people and like 90% of them.
Such a loss.
Start playing song and before it's over. Like, it was empty.
to get used to get the box from Budweiser. Because I always see that
day, a month spent. 9 years to 5 years.
I don't think that we get the box. You know, it's like whenever they have, so because they probably have like a bunch of partners and then like, oh,
if no one else wants to go,
or they want to like, there's something that they
Yeah, but not like.
I can watch
So I don't know what strategic move they can have or.
Everyone, please take a seat.
Oh yeah. Even near the
You're just refusing
Where's my pen?
Is it?
All right, let us continue now. So what I want you to do in the second part of this lecture is to work on on another case study, bigger one. And in this case study, especially for you kind of to try out to translate a real world decision problem into a decision tree. Because perhaps the most important part is not all these complicated calculations we have done in this session and even more so in the next session, but it's really just a tool to help us structure our thinking when facing sequential risks. It's all about understanding the problem. So that goes back to what I said in session 1. Model building only serves the purpose that we figure out what to do now given a complex situation. And for that we will work in the whole second half on a case study called recreational properties. So this is a case study about developing a ski resort somewhere in the White Mountains, which is code word for Alps. And I want you in groups of around 2 to 4 people. If you want to do 5, that's fine, but please not larger, and please don't work alone. Try to solve it. There are 4 questions at the end of this case study, and go through them one by one, and it will be me and the 2 tutors which will be there to help you. So when you have questions, please get in touch.
Now you open a new profile. I was interested in your service. I was tempted to become a subscriber.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's extra £4 as well.
Someone made our OnlyFans.
You need one more. You've got one more.
Contact all my receive like 5 DMs like your but we receive how much for calls.
If everyone has a case study, if somebody doesn't have such a sheet of paper yet, please raise your hands, and it comes to you immediately. All right, first read it and then start to work in groups.
Monday morning.
You're missing still one. Okay, let me in.
We can get one more. Non, je vais regarder le site, je suis sûre qu'il y en a des.
So obviously this is the one where it's just sells the user code. This one is like just wait, right? It's the EU law scheme. So assume that the user is the so there's no choice but to sell it.
That doesn't make sense. It's not acceptable. I think we should go to this
So I much rather have this. Because I already know, like, I'll do question 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
So that should take half an hour. And then that's still 10 hours.
It's the software. It's not like
Very easy. It does all of it for you. So we're now going to value. Actually, when you
already get the
you get the answer. No, I mean, I saw it. Yeah, I saw it. He said you should be like me and catch it. That's what you want to work for. So they have different blend blenders. They only come here to do like something and then they go. So they're not full time. But if I want to do like this, maybe but it's somewhere. So you said that you anyone else like this, like data analysis or something like that, I would like to. But yeah, basically that's what I do.
This year is just not the best. I've never seen anyone do I feel like I'm dealing with a middle school boy. Allez, let's go. Come on now. Allez, so first, little square.
There's no lease, there's right now.
Little silver first. So we go, then we have a black pen.
Yes, White Mountain. That's drop no mountain, it's 1.5 million circles. Yes, mountain, you have lease, $1. It says. We said that it's 8 million.
Maybe after
Sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
But what goes next? The decision.
Or is it triangle? Oh no, wait.
Yeah, decision is triangle. Decision is triangle. Either triangle.
Way more like
No pressure me. I just leave your house. Just want to understand the difference. Triangle
so the first decision is to
so little triangle, this is second.
so you know that he doesn't exercise, he's gonna get the other one.
Technically, I think
I was just trying to see.
There is the possibility of having a
square and then into the square.
Tell the property without any you can say
No, sorry, it's triangle.
There's this one. The last one is gonna.
Like the first one is where you create or invest in other departments. The one at the end.
This is a payoff, so this is a decision.
Yeah, like I would say, project
Wait, actually, just because there's
Yes, we get the lease. Now we decide do we build or not.
Circle is checks, square is decision. Est-ce que je paye up? Here. Parce que here is decision. Après here is a little circle. Okay, so this is development and no development.
Like it doesn't matter if you said the right option. Yeah, so
Otherwise, you're not
no, sorry, if you decide you want something like and get to right
It might be perfect, but I mean, it's
But there is no more. Yeah. Okay. No, I tried to.
Nothing of the
What do you expect them to be? Oh, good. I mean, like in London, I don't but then
maybe you can find out
yeah, exercise is
So resume would be better when we work back.
yeah, but I already so maybe you can run by there's many different steps and trying to see what's going on in your
I've been here in this one.
always like
outside of
but I want to try something new because then I always end up with this.
No, don't be lost. I mean, it's in her.
Why not this? They have the best pad thai.
Okay, sorry.
My structure is the same. Yes, try to get the lease.
This in the self-event, you're going to
Yeah, I like that, but the only problem is
I think this makes it right. Like you have the Fully white maps short, and you have the least reverted shots, and then otherwise you have the 1.5 meters. Not saying the problem in the representation, better condition scenario. No least adjustment.
Sorry, minus 10, minus 6 plus
No, then they acquire yeah. So
There is an evidence where she can
At the time, yeah.
That was normal.
But they have
more like
they decided to
more like that. What would be the
yeah.
this is just my
Maybe not.
I don't like
Decision to be in this or just show me
like there are 3 or 4 samples, and I also
You get at the end, right? After doing all the. No, but 1.31 is the result. Yeah, but it's the starting point with a short, but it's the last thing that you reach. So at the end you say, since the expected profit is 1.31, you're not doing something else, but you're doing to action.
I know it's synthetic, but if you get a really complicated tree, then you just get confused what is what. So be careful.
I think it's fine.
And now think about
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
You are definitely
Very hands-on in a sense, right?
but you can't say we're gonna spend $2 million on this.
The thing is, like, whatever he said, he goes with it.
It is, but that's the only reason why I still have it. University? You go on an exchange, it's more likely the case that you're gonna find everything. You're there for like 5 months, and you stay there only for like 1 semester.
Basically,
Okay, I was on but I was in
Perfect.
Oh yeah, you're also
This is stupid stuff.
Take my 2 pairs of shoes. Supposed to do right there, far away from home. Might as well take a chance of moving around. What? What kind of movie is it? You're, I mean, what would you expect?
Yeah, sorry. No, I
Miami or New Orleans?
And the square is yeah. I mean, it's just a convention, but you remember when you
How much it would be dollars?
what's the brightness?
Yeah, pretty much.
Because like his parents kind of knew that he was super violent and that he was
Does he care about skiing or like?
I mean, it's not what you could do, but it's easier if you don't that the parents like they ran away and they were not like trying to look for it. It's also the cycling included. It should be considered anywhere. That's why we ignore it. It's easier, you know, if you know it's not gonna change. Yeah, exactly, because he already got and everything starts from there. He does not have
It's not interesting. We were doing something, but I heard the shoes or something fun.
Yeah, no, but it just is.
I would recommend you not to consider, but like if you have so many where you have a conversation about the American Civil War, like Christmas one is lunch, like a guy, like a person that we actually have good like it's like whenever he does interview I think it's a very just be present. No, you spend that.
Money you see yourself. Yeah, go. How many next year?
Not because there's like a big sign saying like there's a big sign then you're indifferent, I think. So that's
Imagine was
But I like 45 minutes before it happened. What is the chance? What is
Catalina, what happened? Wait.
I already told you that you're green and that's shade, but yeah. There was a time I was at the French party, and then now I know, yeah, so yeah, you are listening to fire. Not a
I don't know if this is right.
And then we heard
it's way better. Like I keep looking at it and I'm like, yeah, I'm so basically what we know is that you should
chill, walk
I just did 4 points
Still not a pleasant experience.
I don't know if it's going to
but I'm not
Seriously, like 2 weeks, interesting.
that makes so much sense. Yeah, it was very fun times, but except
Oh right, then here it's minus 2. This because it's then it's comparable with this. So it's here it's minus 15 for each. Here it's minus 15. But then we get the choice.
I need to like defend myself. Here's from Texas, by the way. And I was
That depends on the state. In certain states, like California, you are allowed to use it on the street, even if it's up to you. In the seminar, we have states where you can also bring it.
Yeah, I have another PDF with like a few questions. But I was only planning to go through 3 questions and then like a chance. I suspect that takes about 30-40 minutes. So we
I understand, like,
okay, yeah, we can. So, I have like some guidelines of what in the beginning, I'll always ask if there's anything you notice, and then we always have time for that.
I see you working with
But also the problem now is that there are certain guys, but there are literally more than
because I interpret how much can to break
went to UBA.
now you're saying that
yeah, it has changed to one.
Shanghai is a big part.
It's as if we're hearing that plane crash. You see what I'm saying? Like the likelihood of
but I'm not sure how
if it happens, the likelihood it happens again. There it's
Yeah, let's finish it.
I think no one likes the food. It's so bad.
These guys are human shields, but we're fine.
And yet they didn't even fucking manage to get like any spice or anything in their food. I'm like, what the fuck?
It's fine, I can hear
Like I have vacation in a year. We would do this every day, every day.
We're asking questions. Anyone case my everyone can get in and shoot the guy that's like they're not going to have police at the end of every building. It's impossible.
I think here you're
Cowards can be lying like you're making a mess.
yeah, exactly.
Also like getting
Because basically the tree is exactly this.
Yeah.
Not 100% environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if he gets the second lead, yeah, because
Okay. I mean, at midnight, just resorted. You're on top of it.
yeah, exactly.
It's a little bit of a deal.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, kind of.
She works, and she, you know, she was like, I'm gonna have to wake up in the middle of the night to do that one test. Like, I do it. Yeah. Well, I think yeah. You told me. Because there is
way that simultaneously the option would be more beneficial. Here we have this trend that higher is modifier but then my uni was like
Zero reflex. Perfect.
I went we had some
Can you have any videos or anything?
You do have the
You can take guests if you want. Sweat.
No, I don't think it means that.
That's embarrassing. Special by university. Don't admit everybody. You're the one who wants to go to a romantic no, cinema. Not the ones where you have like
Talk about. I know some of you have been quite finished again, but others get bored. As usual, I need to strike a trade-off and also take into account we have only 15 minutes left. So now we made sure that practically every one of you managed to get to the decision tree. So you should have all. But you should have all got something like this here. I know there were some discussions, should you include the $500,000 for paying for the option or not? It's up to you, both is correct. If you deduct $500,000 everywhere, it's fine. I did not because I decided this $500,000 even happens before the first decision, so I judged it as out of the decision context. Not mandatory, that's but the way I did it. And I also recommend you to deduct here when you write the payoffs, always deducting all the costs from the revenues. So you end up with 1.3 million rather than with a higher number. It's just easier. You can do it other ways, but you would get full points in the exam, but I think you would just confuse yourself, especially in lecture 5, 6 get a bit more involved. Okay, so now you rolled all the three back and came up with these numbers here, and it is best to exercise the option and making a tiny profit of 0.21 million above our outside option. Okay, and it's best to develop the result. Now, let me move to question 2, the second bullet point, where it asks you, you would like to know how much did he lose as a result of this court case. What have you found? 3.7. Can you explain how you got there? I might have given you the answer, but still repeat it to the class, please.
Because if we suppose that, so we need to find how the expected value changed. So if we suppose that there is no lawsuit, there is no 50-50. There is just 100%. So let's say that the value of the option of exercising the option would be 5.425. However, since there is the lawsuit, the option of exercising is 1.71. So it's just the difference between the two.
There are two ways to think about it. The easiest way is simply before the lawsuit, all this part of the tree didn't exist. We were here. We had only one decision to make, and then depending on our reputation is we ball back this. We were previously 0.43 million. And now what happened is the lawsuit brought us there. So the difference between these two is the 3.5, some 6 million or something, is what they have lost. And another way to think about it, that's what he tried to divide the 100% and 0% and roll back to 3, you would end up with 5.43 million here as well. Two solutions. Okay. Now, third question is, what would be a reasonable investment if Anders would find a way to convince the judge for certain with their environmental impact assessment? How much would they be willing to pay at most? It's the same number, exactly. Because they were there, got to there, and if there would be a way to get there back, they would pay this difference. So that's the simple logic here. So an alternative way to think is if you have cash, a lot of cash, and have a suitcase and have a way to get the cash to the lawyers, to the judges, that's how much you would pay them to bribe them to make sure the lawsuit is decided in your favor. Of course, we are all very ethical here. You haven't heard any of this stuff, but construction industry is a little bit dirty business in this regard. Okay, and we call this, there is a term for it, which we will talk more about in lecture 5, but I want to already mention this as a term called value of control. If there would be a way we can control the outcome here of this second lease, that's how much we would pay for this controlling. That's the value of controlling uncertainty. Okay, now question 3 asked you for a sensitivity analysis. What have you found? What is the threshold? 47%. Someone is brave enough to explain how you got there? Yeah. Well, okay.
No,
okay.
no, if there is someone else.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's not, it's not
no, I just put so for the lease no lease.
Yeah.
I put P and 1 minus P.
Exactly. That's what I did here as well.
And so I just solved. Then I did so P times 5.425 plus 1 minus P times minus 2 equals to 1.5. So you see the threshold, and you know that if it's lower than 47%, then
solves this equation exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I would not exercise. What if it's higher? I would exercise.
Exactly. That's all. And you can rapidly display it like that, and that's the solution. Has anyone had an attempt on the second sensitivity question, the optional one? Julia.
With my group, we figure out it's 67%.
And you got there, I presume, rolling back the tree and assumed I have here a Q and a 1 minus Q. And then you do that, you get an expected profit of 5.5Q plus 1.3. And then in this decision node, you made an assumption. What's your assumption here?
So that is always going to be higher than 4.
Exactly. You assume that you go this path because 5.5Q plus 1.3 is higher than it. Now you can calculate once Q goes below 49%, then this option would be better. Because so that 5.5 times 49% plus 1.3 equals 4, roughly. So if Q is smaller than 0.49, you would go ideally this path. Now you continue this part, you calculate the expected profit, you came in your equation up with 2.75Q minus 0.35. That's correct. Now if Q were smaller than 0.49, we calculate 50% times these 4 plus 50% times minus 2 equals 1 if Q is smaller than 0.49. And now, as before, we need to make a decision. Do we exercise the option now, or do we rather go for the outside option? So you solved this equation, so that is this number here, 2.75Q minus 0.3 is larger than 1.5. And you realize that if Q is smaller, is larger than 0.67, and it goes below, you change your decision. Now, what I did, I tried the same and came up with this sensitivity graph here, which has these little dashed lines. And let me explain how you get there. Sensitivity analysis is always what do you know before you make the decision and what do you know after you make the decision. So homework 2 will be quite a lot about this topic, so don't worry if it's a bit complicated now, there is an explanation coming after lecture 4. Now, let's say we are here and we think our Q, our reputation, that the reputation will turn out well, is 75%. What do we do then? We exercise the option. If Q is at that point, if you already think it's smaller than 67%, we don't exercise the option, go for the outside option. So that is basically here this intersection. Now, let's assume Q is larger than 0.75. Now something happens and we end up here. If we at this point still assume Q is 0.75, then of course we develop our resort. If at that point we had a change of heart and decide, I think I was too optimistic, but I only realized it here, not here. If I realize here, maybe it should be 60%. What do?
You still go.
You still go there, exactly. But if you at this point decide it's actually under 49%, then you decide to move here and take the 4 million. Okay, now let's assume you still think it's 75% here. So this is here's this where these lines separate. Now let's assume you still think it's 75% here. Then you start building this thing, and then you realize I got it wrong. My model assumptions are wrong. It is smaller than 75%. You can't really change things here anymore. All decisions are taken. And this is basically this blue line is what you get as expected profit depending on your choice of Q. If you update your Q only here at this point. If you change your Q before a decision, you take a different decision. But afterwards, that is the possible outcomes. So it's always what do you think before and after the decision. These are two types of sensitivity analysis. And in the homework, I will call them question A and question B. So if you answer sensitivity analysis, always be clear. If you ask question A or question B, you will read more about that. That's a bit more difficult one to explore and really have a good understanding what it means, sensitivity analysis. So now question 4. That was probably the hardest one. What did you have as answer?
It's really sad.
Who has a number on offer? Hand up. Who finds one? One person is stretching, but I know he has also a number. So it is
175.
Yes, exactly. It's 1.75 million. So what is, let's think about question 4. Ask us what happens if there is an extension of the option, how much would we pay for it? Can you explain how you got to this number 1.75 million?
Yes, so in case we don't, I created a new graph, a new tree, to see what would be the present value of.
Yeah, I remember your solution. It's a bit more complicated than I would do it. Has someone found an easier way to get there? Sorry, and your answer is right, and if you would get full grades. Has someone found an easier way? Yep, behind you.
Okay, so the way we went about it was, so if we wait for a year, potentially we will know whether the ruling is going to be in favor for, against or positive for us or negative for us. If the ruling is negative, then essentially we can assume that there is no chance that we're going to get given the grant. So we will have essentially either the situation where we exercise the option and we are not given the grant, so we lose to million budgeting, or we are in a situation where we can go to the alternative option. The alternative option gives us a profit of 1.5. So if the ruling is negative, then 1.5. If the ruling is positive for us, then we can assume that we're going to get the grant. So we're in the situation of develop the resort or not, and we can be essentially getting the 5.4.
Correct.
Yeah, for 5.4 is profit.
Yeah.
Now, if we assume that the probability that the ruling is going to be positive for us is 50%, the ruling is going to be negative 50%, then we can do the expected.
So you're exactly correct. So multiply this. So we have 50% chance that our ruling is positive, and in this case, we are happy to develop this and strike the 5.43 million. But we have also a 50% chance that our ruling is negative because it's passed. But at that point, we haven't bought the property yet. So we wouldn't go for this minus 2 million in this case, but we could go for the 1.5 million instead. So that is 1.5 here. And if you add it all up, then you end up with, what was it? 1. No, not quite yet.
No, but then we have to take out.
You get 3.465 million, exactly.
Then we have to take out the 1.7 essentially the current.
So 3.65 million. That is our expected profit with the extension if the extension were for free. Hadn't paid anything for it. Without the extension, we were there, 1.7 million. So what the extension basically helped us to do is to move from here to there. And that is the difference between two is 1.755 million. That is the value of the extension. Now what this extension basically provides us is information. We don't control the outcome of the lawsuit, but what we do instead is we gain, it's called the value of information. That's a term which we will talk about a lot in the next lecture. In this case, we got the information where we are, but we don't control it, and this is worth only 1.71 million. Can someone explain why the value of control, which was 3.5 million, is larger than the value of information, which was 1.71 million? 1.75 million. Anyone has a guess?
Because if you consider the value of control, it is worth more because gives clarity on a more uncertain environment, because there is like the fact that the list goes well or not, while the value of information is less because there's less uncertainty.
Yeah, that's correct. Basically, controlling an outcome is always better than just having a forecast of it. That's a simple explanation. We will talk about it more in the next lecture. So that's the end of it. You have seen the answers. I have 10 practice questions which should be helpful for you for the exam. So there's the questions and later comes also the answers for it. There is a homework and a seminar. In the seminar, Marius and Carlos will talk with you more about sensitivity analysis, going back to history using past exam questions. And they will also introduce you to a new software, which is encounter-based, not as complicated as risk. And in the homework, you need to apply it. So I suggest first this seminar, then do the homework. And let me finish this lecture with my favorite quote, which is supported by risk analysis. You might have heard from before. As we know, there are known knowns. There are things we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also the unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know. And that are the biggest problems in building models. Have you forgotten an uncertainty? Ask yourself always this question. Okay, see you next week.
Zero, zero.
Honestly, I'm very happy that they were done. We're done.
When I wake up, today was
No, but I think that's fine.
7 a.m.
Nah, she lives in between SOC and I usually work on the night.
my family is working. I think this idea is very like a concept. If I wake up early, I'm like, I hate everyone. No, my roommate is like, hi, good morning. I'm like,
fuck off.
She apologizing to me. She really had to be I'm sorry, I'm not going to bother you. I was like, no. We're all going 7 a.m. Trust me.
Why do we have to wake up that early?
Yeah, I have my lunch for 7, but I only wake up at 7:30.
Yeah, because it takes some time.
Changing my sleep, that's why.
So unfair. So unfair. So unfair. I wake up at 7. If I wake up at 7, it's like running. Shower, no breakfast at all. I grab a banana and I eat it on the way.
I have to have my breakfast.
Something. Yeah,
I usually, if I don't have time, I just drink. Like, I need to cover the phone.
otherwise you just starve at some point.
Oh, Catalina.
One of my close friends is
I don't know exactly.
She's just like nice person, but I know
yeah, they have
with show and without.
You're gossip.
No, but I mean, I'm just.
No, but it's.
Thank you for liking me. I didn't realize how
Mine of us. Yeah, they are or they're not. They're
you extrovert, not actual list of those people.
No, it's not that I have a list. At the beginning, I actually couldn't think of anything. But then when I couldn't think of anyone.
Yeah, so the first doesn't have a backup. Okay, we give it to Sanya, and Sanya will. Sanya is all quite a key second. Yeah, she will write.
Yeah. When I go out. Yeah, no, I know it's chocolate, but I don't know what's inside. Then there is our place who is really good. We have a risk whatever, so so but I don't know if it's good. Oh, sorry, if you want to go back.
I'll tell you if I try it.
Yeah, you have. Smart. Are you leaving tomorrow? Are you leaving tomorrow? Oh, right.
Every time you
Pardon? No.
He said they'll call it, but like.
Oh my God.
Bye, have a good one.
No,
That's always what you know. It's gonna be fast.
Thank you. Oh, you may eat Chinese first. So I'm making
But it's not
then you
worth
can
it.
see.
I think that's what I think. I think they will 2 hours.
Like all the time.
Yeah, 2 hours or 2.5. Yeah.
And then if I order it, by the price of
Yeah, it's really
Bye bye.
Yeah.
Very
needy. I got a fairy.
Wait, okay, so
So in the queue.
Genuinely नहीं आता है। Yeah. And अपने additional rules भी करवा दिया था मैंने बोला कि लोग ज़्यादा देखना चाहिए लोग ये भी करते हैं अब वन चाउन में जाके
I always wanted to do it.
You should say, you should always say, you should write mine.
I'm going in there like, no. Yeah, London doesn't have that. That's
Not
true.
as good, yeah.
Yeah, you gotta write your decision tree. Figure out whether.
You're really the poet.
But you'll send us picture and we'll be very curious.
Yeah.
So we're not going to discuss
side tree.
India ही हमारा
Yeah, it's just a side tree. It's always quite well the first
आज मैं कैरोलाइन से मीटिंग पे किया कि तुम मेरे को जॉब दिलाओ मेरे को नहीं पता ठीक है फिर पैसे लेके मेरे consulting भाई she was at KPMG consulting for like no traffic or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cover letter में problem. बट इतना मैटर नहीं करता है cover letter.
करता है यार कंपनी टू कंपनी डिपेंड
करता है. हेलो. क्या ये क्या है बाहर की जांच? यार मैं सोच रही हूँ वो जो हमारा रोल वाला है अरे यार
get all this, you have 3 decisions by 2 outcomes. It's a bit bigger tree. So you somehow add probabilities to it. In fact, also a good thing they use to actually calculate the payoffs at the end. That convince them all now to do deduct the costs and see if it's a bit of painful.
Yeah. Most of them they get it.
Yeah, but some are persistent.
Yeah, I know.
And we need to be careful when grading. I said it's correct. It is kind of correct. It's you can see what they're doing. They just confuse themselves. Yeah, I think so. This. Back to decision tree. Choose good. Copy that. Here. So we have the risk profile for side tree. We can do that as well. That is the solution.
So this is the solution for making.
That's a silver decision.
Yeah, what's the solution?
Sensitivity analysis. Yep. Then we have this king. I close this line as well, but it's the sensitivity analysis for side tree to change in number of competition. So we get this. So maybe it's a side tree example. So because you don't need to bother writing up a solution. It's all there.
Yeah, in the book. I have one of those books at home. I just need to go and find it.
Well, it's online version.
Oh right, okay, yeah.
I can send you. I downloaded the PDF this morning, yesterday. I can send it today. It's easy to make it. So go for this. You can build a tree. You can take some more story. Let me send you the slides.